All right. Hi, everyone. This is Alex Sheen, founder of Because I Said I Would. I hope you are doing well. Just checking in here from the Cleveland, Ohio area. This is a picture of me as a baby looking like a starfish or some kind of Patrick like. I don't know. Look at the little cheeks. Oh. Okay. So, what are we doing today? We are doing what we do every time. We're first saying hi to everybody. That would be nice, I think. Uh, Akame, Veronica, Alexis, hi everyone. Thanks for joining the live stream. Um, we've got to talk about habits and tactics. We're going to talk about how to get better with keeping promises today. Alexis, I see in the comments. I hope you are having a good day as well. And when we think about what it takes to have a good day, little tangent, little side note. I mean, it connects, I guess, to the habit and tactic for today, which is self-control. Right? A lot of people think of self-control as we try to have a better day. Maybe that's around emotional self-control, but there's actually four types of self-control. We'll talk about what those are, how they provide us strength to keep our promises, how they are not easy, how they are different, all kinds of stuff. Jose, nice to see you. See you in the comments there. Um, uh, help me out with that. Give me some pronunciations. Spell it out for me in almost a phonetic way. I think it's Rena, maybe. Hi, good to see you. We're going to check in with chapter members. We're going to say hi to you guys as well. Remember, you can go to becauseIsaidIwould.org. Check out the chapter program that we have. We'll check in with a video from Veronica. I've already seen her in the chat. Amanda is saying it's a little hard to hear you to turn up the volume. Let me check that out. Let me crank the volume. Thank you for that little tip. And so we'll check in with the chapter members, and then we'll talk about a trending post that's it's been on my mind. Has to do with, of course, COVID-19. It's in my brain. Just thinking about it constantly in our efforts against the pandemic. Talk about a post there. Make some promises. Goal of this live stream, goal of every live stream that we're doing is to develop the concept of self-control to better humanity, to make the world a better place. If you're watching, that's hopefully what your goal is. Hopefully you're seeing what's happening in your community, in your state, in your country, and you feel that self-control can make a difference. That's what we've got to do, though, in ourselves. And so let's dive into it. Let's look at a little bit of feedback that I'm looking for you. So I want you to answer this next question in the chat. What's the most important character or value out of the following 7? Okay. What's the most important character value out of the following 7? Raina, thank you for the phonetic pronunciation. Appreciate you in the comments. Raina, what's the most important character value out of the following 7 for you? This is the Because I Said I Would code of honor, the 7 elements of honor, the 7 things that we believe a promise at its core is made out of: self-control, honesty, accountability, compassion, sacrifice, hope, contemplation. Not necessarily in that order, but which of these 7 really speak to you? What would you say out of these 7 is the most important to you? And I think they all play a part. You know, when I was writing these 7 elements of honor for the organization, the last one I actually added was hope. And when I was thinking through the first 6, I actually thought I had it done. But then I realized that you really, if you don't have hope, why even make a promise, right? Why even start? You know, if you really think there is no chance, if you have limited time on this earth, why would you put your efforts into something you don't think is going to work, right? So that was actually the last one that I added was hope. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Talk about something different, but still, I want to hear from you. We've got Douglas saying accountability. Accountability is one of the biggest one. Number 4 from Bianca. Bianca's saying compassion. I hear that. For me, that's my most important out of the 7. Raina says honesty. Good to hear from you. And Veronica, it's kind of difficult, but she's going to go with accountability. All right. I think all of these obviously matter. All of them are in 7 elements of honor. But what we're going to talk about today, what I think is the most important to keeping promises, the number 1 I put at number 1 is what Martha just commented, and that is self-control. Now, the thing is, when I started, because I said I would, before there were 12 million promise cards in the universe, before our chapters, before it all, I really thought, and you may think now, that self-control was just one thing. Now, it might be hard to define what it is, right? You can't point to a body part and say, that's self-control. It's not so tangible, but it still felt like a singular thing. Self-control is one characteristic. Almost like honesty seems like one characteristic. But if you dive deeper into self-control, understanding what it takes to keep promises, understanding the true dimensions of this very difficult task to master, the thought of self-control, it really can be divided into 4 different pieces and parts. 4 different types of self-control: physical movement, concentration, emotion, and impulses. 4 different types of self-control. Let's talk about why it even matters to know the differences between these, what the differences are between different types of self-control. And I'm going to start with actually a video. I'm going to start with just a really quick clip describing what self-control of physical movement means. So let's take a look at that.
Self-control of physical movement. This is the ability to consciously control the movement of your body. For example, some people enjoy exercise more than others, but this type of self-control can apply to something like the physical movement it takes to get up off the couch when you're kind of tired, or even cleaning the house requires walking, scrubbing, and other actions. Some self-control is determined by physical movement.
All right, so physical movement, self-control, pretty straightforward, but I see this a lot in the universe of promises playing out in a number of different ways. Let's take example somebody that I know, that our co-founder Amanda Messer, who's actually in the chat right now. Good to see you there, Amanda. A friend of ours, Katie Spots. I want to talk about Katie Spots. She is the youngest person to row a boat across the entire Atlantic Ocean, okay? 70 days alone at sea. And I write about this in the Because I Said I Would book because it was such a incredible display of self-control of physical movement that it boggled my mind. It's something I talked to her about. And she used to do something to train that just exhibited this particular type of self-control. Okay, instead of a person just normally going to the gym, right, getting on your little treadmill and running for a certain distance or running for a certain time, this is what Katie Spots, youngest person to row a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, would do. She would literally get on a treadmill and then tell herself that she was going to keep running until like 10 or 20 other people got off their treadmills. Okay, what does that mean? That means this woman literally would be running. There would only be, like, let's say 8 people on their treadmill. There's literally only 8 people on treadmills. She would wait for somebody to drive their car, a stranger of unknown schedule, drive their car to the parking lot, get out, walk in the gym, change, get on the treadmill, exhaust themselves, and then leave, get off the treadmill. She would literally just wait for people to come to the gym. That's how long she would run. She had an incredible self-control of physical movement. But that doesn't always translate to the other three types of self-control. They're not the same. And knowing our strengths and weaknesses in these different areas is incredibly important. Okay, let's take players in the NFL maybe, players in the NBA, professional athletes. We see an incredible self-control to physical movement, can get themselves up out of the morning. In the morning, they can work out. They can have this schedule. They can do 2-a-days. They can bench 450 pounds. They can do all these things with incredible self-control, physical movement, but they still, like anybody, could be vulnerable to substance abuse, right? Maybe that self-control of impulse is a challenge. Maybe the self-control of emotion is a challenge. Maybe they self-medicate and abuse alcohol to cover up challenges they may have emotionally. Self-control, physical movement can help you in different ways to address emotional challenges, as any one of these types of self-control can help another, but it's not all the same. Or at least it's good to think about it differently because it helps us problem solve. Okay, so self-control of physical movement is one of the four types. Let's move on to the next type of self-control, which is concentration. Let's watch just a real quick clip on that.
Self-control of concentration. The ability to focus one's powers, focus one's efforts, focus attention for a given period of time. For example, learning a new language requires repetition and concentration over hours, weeks, and even years. There are steps to learning to read and write, such as decoding and language processing, that require specific attention. This is a little different than self-control of emotion because we're not talking about emotional highs or lows. It's basically just a tiredness of repetition that creates sort of a boredom that begs you to stop. One self-control of concentration can define a life.
Okay, so self-control of concentration. This is something that I struggle with. Out of the four types, physical movement, there's certain things that I actually enjoy. I enjoy exercise. I enjoy weightlifting. I enjoy basketball, kickboxing. The physical movement, even waking up, sometimes I'll have to wake up 3, 4, 5 in the morning and catch a flight back when that was a thing and run a 300-day, a year travel schedule kind of thing. And the physical movement part, sometimes people just ask me a lot of questions about, like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know, just comes naturally, diet, exercise. But concentration, I struggle with this one a lot. Actually, this is just something my dad would say. I don't know if it was true, but my father was a pharmacist. As you know, he passed away of stage 4 small cell lung cancer. And because he said I would, was founded in his memory in some part. He actually said the teachers thought I had like ADD or ADHD because I had all this energy and I just really could not focus. They kind of suggested that maybe I should go on Ritalin, some sort of medication to help kind of calm me down. Now, my father's a pharmacist, and he decided, as someone with that medical knowledge, that he didn't really think I was someone who would need that. Whether he was right or wrong, I'll never know. But it just, I've always wondered, how my challenges with self-control of concentration, how real are they, maybe even medically? I'm not sure. But what I do know is that I struggle with it, and it doesn't need to be medical for me to understand that it's something I need to work on. So sometimes what I do to combat my issues of self-control of concentration is that I involve another person. Like if I couldn't study because I just couldn't focus, I get too wound up and want to just do anything but, right? Anything but study. I would just say, I'm going to study with somebody else. I would try to find a way that even if I wasn't as productive, I could still focus on the thing I was doing. Another thing I do constantly is I listen to music. Sometimes actually the music breaks my concentration and what I'm trying to focus on, when I'm trying to write, when I'm trying to edit, what I'm trying to do. But again, it still gets me back in the game enough, interested in enough in the task to get me started again. Then I'll turn off the music and then I'll keep going. I'll keep going. But recognizing if you have a challenge with self-control of concentration is really important. I think it's such a critical part of keeping promises. That's one thing that people, I guess maybe even on the outside of Because I Said I Would, don't really realize. A lot of people think that all the promises that I've kept or some of the stories that I share, that it's always this incredible self-control of sometimes they'll think it's physical movement or self-control of emotion, but really it's one of concentration. A lot of promises to keep are actually incredibly boring. You lose focus very easily, and that grind really kind of tears you down. And that's where a lot of promises are broken. Is can you just do something over and 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 over again? That's a question. I want to say hi to Toby, Douglas. Hi again, everyone in the chat. Let's take a comment here. Douglas says your father was right. Your concentration issues are gifts, not hindrances. You know, that could be, because as the CEO and founder of Because I Said I Would, I have to do a lot of different things. Turn switches on and off, right? Head from one meeting to another. Maybe it is a strength overall, but still a weakness in certain moments. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about the self-control of emotion. Let's look at what that means by definition.
Self-control of emotion. This is the ability to manage one's feelings, one's mental state, whether that's anger, sadness, excitement, or happiness. Maybe a friend is trying to hold you accountable to a promise you broke. For some people, any type of criticism is too much for them to emotionally handle, so they lash back out and make excuses or point out times where the accuser has failed themselves. But those with strong self-control of emotion, they still may feel disappointment of their shortfalls, but they corral that emotion and express themselves productively.
Okay, self-control of emotion. I see this a lot in promise cards. I see this a lot in promises to families, to oneself. Jason in the comments saying that way back in 2013 had a promise card about stopping substance abuse, stopping his drinking challenge. And that is one thing, again, we'll go back to and say that self-control of emotion can overlap into substance abuse challenges. Self-control of emotion is something that we'll often see to be a part of a challenge with self-harm, with suicidal ideation. Toby's mentioning that he had anger issues, and he has anger issues. And that, again, is self-control of emotion. That's the thing about this. It's like, which one of these four, and I'd like to hear from you in the live chat, which one of these four speaks to you the most? Which one do you have the biggest problem with? Physical movement, emotion, concentration, or impulses? And we'll get to impulses here in a second. And I appreciate Toby's comment. A goal that he has, maybe a promise. If I can stop getting angry, I can learn to drive, right? Sometimes you got to realize that there's a correlation, there's a connection between one challenge and a promise. And what's going to get you to the other side isn't just so clear cut. Sometimes you've got to analyze the problem deeper, understand the self-control issue, and work towards that. Okay, let's talk about impulses. Let's talk about the self-control of impulses. What does that mean? And why is it a little bit different than emotions? Or is it?
Self-control of impulses. The ability to manage sudden, spontaneous reaction to some usually unplanned action. People can be emotionally inside or even show some emotion on the outside, but that doesn't mean that they are acting impulsively. Self-control of impulses can be easily understood by an extreme, addiction. But we all have something in our lives that is hard to resist. Resisting those impulses requires a special type of self-control.
Absolutely. We look at the thought of impulse, and it's weird to put alcohol as like cigarettes and ice cream like all in the same thing, but that's, I think, helps us just understand that impulse can come in so many different ways, so many different places in life. And I also like to think about those small challenges. BT dubs, I've been eating a lot of ice cream lately. I like to think about the small challenges, like maybe not going for a second helping as tests, as a meter to my self-control. Like if I can't even do that, if I can't even stop myself from eating another bowl of ice cream, what does that say about my self-control of impulse? It doesn't have to be some like life-changing moment, but there are good little reminders about where I might need improvement on in impulse, in emotion, in physical movement, in concentration. Let's go to the comments. Amanda says that hers is physical movement. Akame says emotion. Veronica says she struggles with all of them, and emotion can get the best of Reina. We've got some folks checking in from El Paso, and Douglas said that in 2010 he stopped drinking. That is something, another thing that connects with impulse control. Took a class on that actually, and understand a trigger for identification. My biggest issue, he says, now would be the initial start to do anything. I get that. That's why I like to, again, use things like music, use things like accountability partners, like, okay, I'll do it together. I'm more likely to start if I line up a couple dominoes, if I do it in a certain way. You got to crack your own code like that. You got to understand how you work and say, that's what my go-to is. I'm going to use X, Y, or Z. That's going to get me started. But let's talk about that thought of triggers, right? Now, I know that the word trigger is used a lot, and sometimes people will emphasize it so much that it gets almost played out and people start making fun of it. But triggers are a real thing. And so don't carry any sort of stigma with that word. Just think about it as a psychological term, that sometimes one thing is going to lead you to the thoughts or impulses of another. That's an important part of understanding the impulse of self-control. What is going to push over that domino? What even sets off that impulse? And how do you stay away from that as much as possible? That's a question we should ask ourselves. And so let's keep going. Let's realize that self-control is divided into 4 different types. Find moments in your life where you are recognizing certain weaknesses and strengths. Maybe right now, make a commitment. Make a commitment to understand that part of you a little bit better. Make a commitment to make a plan, habits and tactics to help develop that, whatever it may be. So which of the 4 are weakest? Or maybe to the point that we've seen in the live chat, what is your strength? What are you going to lean on when you have a fault, a challenge in one of the 3? What is the 4th that you're strongest in, and how can you use that as a benefit? Okay. If you want to see that video about the 4 types of self-control, keeping your head, it's about an 8-minute video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Even right now, you can check out that video later. There's some additional tips and things. And if you want to check out my TED Talks, just go to becauseisaidiwould.org/TED and visit us there. We'd love to see you on our website. So habits and tactics, we've gone through that a little bit, talked about self-control, the 4 types. Hopefully that opened your mind to a couple of things. Toby, thank you for your comment. I recently stopped buying things that I really don't need with my money. Saving money is something that's really important, especially in reaching certain goals in a recession and the challenging times that we face ahead. And sometimes we don't want to buy things because it just, consuming an extra thing may not be the greatest for the environment. How can we reduce waste? That impulse to buy is sometimes not the greatest thing either. So I appreciate that comment. We're gonna check in with our chapters now. That's the second thing on our live stream agenda right now. I want to talk about first, before we do that, an article that I saw that relates to a video that I'm going to share from a chapter member, Veronica. I hope your ears are perking up right now because you're going to be featured on screen here in a minute. But Veronica said some things that made me think of an article I saw recently about COVID-19. COVID-19 in the United States has caused a higher death toll, a death toll that's surpassing the Vietnam War in American deaths. It has already surpassed combat deaths in that 20-year war, 20 years of casualties. In the Vietnam War, COVID-19 has killed more Americans than died in Vietnam. It doesn't, I think we're getting this sensation like it's over. And that is just like could not be further from the truth. We've all heard flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. Have you seen the diagrams? Like, have you looked at the curve diagrams? Like, it's not flat. So what is that going to mean? That's going to mean that since now that over 50,000 Americans have died of COVID-19, that the forecast for 60,000 Americans to pass away of this disease is likely not accurate. It would only mathematically seem that there's no way it's going to be that low, especially since stay-at-home orders are lifting. In certain states, you can go to a restaurant, sit with 6 people at a table. You can do that right now in certain places. And, I could debate the humanitarian balance between economy and lives saved. There's a connection to saving lives on both sides. I'm not going to go into that, but what I do know is that there are going to be more people with this disease, more humanitarian challenges, and each of us have to play a role in trying to support those who get sick, trying to prevent additional people from getting sick. And Veronica just shared a video with us about what's at stake for her, how she looks at the coronavirus. And first I want to say, Veronica, thank you for sharing that video, and I'm going to play it right now.
I stay home for the elderly couple that I dog walk for. They meet all of the criteria for being susceptible to COVID, which is they have a bunch of underlying health conditions like diabetes, asthma, all that type of stuff. And they're both, elderly, like I said. And I'm currently the only company that they are getting during this quarantine because I still walk their dog because, he would get stir crazy and we don't want to do that to him. So whenever I go over, I make sure that I'm always staying a couple feet away from them. I make sure that I've washed my hands beforehand and I'm carrying hand sanitizer. And I most certainly do not really go outside of my neighborhood unless I absolutely have to. So that's why I stay home.
So Veronica there sharing a message about the importance of her neighbors, how she's supporting them, but still following these safety protocols that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, really outlined for us. What Veronica's words and message here really highlight for me is that sometimes you and I, sometimes throughout history, sometimes there's going to be a group of people who are going to have to carry a little extra weight. To solve a problem, to be a part of a solution, to slow something down in a meaningful and humanitarian way, sometimes you and I are going to have to do extra to make up for other challenges, other shortfalls, other people's mistakes. Do you know that? I mean, even think about what it means to volunteer. Right? I think I shared last live stream, 75.1% of Americans don't volunteer. Well, that means that 24.9% that do volunteer, they got to carry 100% of the weight of volunteerism. We can take that as a thought to of bitterness, right? Like, well, why do I have to do that? What about all these other people? Can't they take responsibility? Shouldn't they be held accountable? Yada, yada, yada. Yeah, you can wallow in those thoughts all day. I mean, just go ahead. It's pretty easy. You can do that. Or you can accept reality. You can make a promise. You do your part. And even if a stay-at-home order is lifted, even if you don't have to wear a mask, you still can do those things. I mean, think about the 7 values that I showed. Think about whatever your values are. Forget our 7. What are your values? How do you? What does it mean to be you? What is your code of honor? What do you stand for? Okay, now, are you only going to do that because the law requires it or doesn't require it? Are you only going to follow your code of honor when people are looking or not looking? Is that what it's come to? No, I don't believe so. I believe that you and I, to the best of our abilities, whatever our particular life situations will allow. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm definitely not saying that. But to whatever our life situations will allow, we should do what we believe is right. And that for me means that I don't care if you lift the stay-at-home order. I'm able to work in the capacity I can. I can stay more distant, and I'll try to be an offset for somebody who's going out a little bit more, who is going stir crazy, who maybe doesn't understand or respect the science and math of what appears to be true in this flattening of the curve challenge that we have. So that's what Veronica's message kind of meant to me about, doing your part, making sure you stay in support of others in need. That's what's at stake. Thank you, Veronica, for sharing that. And Toby, thank you for your comment here, just your support for our work. I appreciate meeting you in Wichita, the Gear Up program there. And Douglas, I see your comment about the volunteer percentages, right? A lot of times it's a smaller number of people who are carrying the load. I don't really want to sit here and whine about that. I just want to be a part of a solution. I think a lot of Because I Said I Would supporters feel the same way. Okay, so let's move on to something that's been trending now, something that I saw recently that I thought was really interesting, and it relates to power. It relates to privilege almost. It relates to a sense of responsibility and some of the things that we've been talking about here. And I don't know if you saw this, but the first medical doctor to play in the NFL, he actually won the, was a Super Bowl winner, right? Actually decided to take that experience, and now that obviously they're not playing, they're not practicing, went to the front lines, local hospital in his community in Quebec, and started working as a frontline healthcare worker. Laurent Duvernay Tardif, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name, man, but was a first medical student to graduate to play in the NFL, and his shifts start at 7:30. He'd be working more in like a nursing role. He did clean like bedpans, and he was just doing, honestly, like that, the rawest work you can do as a nurse in some ways, just to relieve some of those nurses who had been working long shifts. These types of volunteers, like this NFL player, are going to make a huge difference in the lives of those nurses and making this problem easier to approach. Because where he was volunteering in this particular area, this city, was one of the hardest hit areas of all of Canada. So it wasn't just like a PR stunt. It was something that he really believed in. I mean, he pursued an entire degree. He got it's not like that wasn't a stunt. He cares about the health of others, and he pursued knowledge to that. He wanted to apply his skills, and I think this is awesome because you don't have to. You're a Super Bowl champion. Got plenty of money. You're going to put your own health at risk? That health, that body is what makes you money. And you can say, well, he's healthy, and for someone between ages of 29 and 44, the risk of dying is less than 1%, blah, blah, blah. I understand that the science, that I get the mortality rates, but can you not get sick? Does a coronavirus not have permanent effects to the health of people who have had it? That is true. And so what he's doing, I believe, is living one of the most important parts of what it means to keep a promise. And it's listed number 5 here. It's sacrifice. You sometimes, unfortunately, the betterment of humanity requires sacrifice. We'd love everything to be convenient and easy. We'd love there to be miracle solutions and technologies and press of a button moments. But sometimes that's not coming, okay? You've got to make a sacrifice, and sometimes you got to live by example. Albert Einstein once said, leading by example is not the primary way of influencing others. It is the only way. And so when a Super Bowl champion who's in a place of privilege at a moment takes a sacrifice and says, I'm going to go and I'm going to help my community, it just shoots a flare in the sky saying, this is how we act. This is what a leader does. And I think this is incredibly noble of him to do, and I just absolutely love it. Want to go back to the comments here. Let's hear your thoughts on this commitment, this follow through, this application of knowledge from Duvernay Tardif. That's what's such a Three Musketeers name. It's very I love it. And what are your thoughts on his promise, what it means? And I'd love to see those in the comments. So the next thing that we're going to do is talk about not just the accomplishments of other people, not just riding a wave of inspiration on things that we have nothing to do with, which we got to talk about making promises ourselves. And when you go and you look at the individual action plans on our website, becauseisaidaitwood.org/action, you can see promises that you can make, ways that you can help your community. We've been talking about this each and every week, and I want to highlight something very specific that you can do in this week's challenge that Veronica did. She recorded a video. She posted that to social media, this thought of what's at stake. That's an important part of influencing those around you. Because here's the thing. When we talk about what's at stake with COVID-19, what's at stake with our community's health, we could just lean on organizations like Because I Said I Would and say, well, they're going to make some video that gets 1 million views. If I record something, it's only going to get 100. What's even the point of trying? We'll leave it up to someone like whatever, right? I've had that thought. Do you know people are going to trust you more, are going to listen to you more, a lot more than me? Who am I? In the last 30 days, we put out a lot of public service announcement about flattening the curve, COVID-19 response and prevention, over 1 million views and blah, blah, blah. But are they really going to listen to me? Or are they going to listen to their niece, to their daughter, to their granddaughter, to their son, to their neighbor? As stay-at-home orders release, but a need to flatten the curve still exists. Governors are saying both things at the same time, which is strange to hear, but whatever. I'm not going to complain about politics at the moment. I want to talk about solutions, the solution being you and your activity, what you decide to do, individual personal responsibility. Stop pointing the finger at other people and what they're doing. When are we going to look in the mirror? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about me and I'm talking about you, okay? If you record a video to share what's at stake, meaning the people that you love who are elderly. That's at stake. That's what the video is. Record a minute or two of sharing a message about what you would lose if we don't show some self-control and compassion, if we don't try to continue to flatten the curve by washing our hands, by wearing masks. In the state of Ohio, the governor said, we're wearing masks, non-negotiable. The very next day, which is today, he rolls that back. And I'm not getting into the partisanship of it. I'm just saying there's still challenges out there. This pull and tension that we want to do the right thing, but there's a pushback, and you can be a part of convincing someone to do the right thing by sharing what's at stake for you. Who are the elderly people in your life that are at risk, and why should people wear masks? Why should they wash their hands? You have never been so close to saving a life. And so are you going to take that opportunity and record one of these videos? That is what I'm challenging to you. And in the live chat right now, if you want to do that, if you're going to commit to that, then type I promise. Just write I promise that you're going to do this challenge. You're going to check out our website. I'll share the link. It's very easy. All the instruction you need, I've already given you. But you can check out becauseIsaidIwould.org, and I'll show you that. Remember, we are still in a battle here. Remember, more Americans have died of COVID-19 than Americans died in combat in 20 years of the Vietnam War. Okay, it's still a challenge. It's still something we need to be a part of. And when we look at even this article, right, Tennessee restaurants reopen as state sees biggest one-day jump in COVID-19 cases in Tennessee. The restrictions still allow you to sit with 6 people at one table, and all you have to do is be 6 feet away from another table. So these politicians are going to make the decisions they're going to make. My commentary isn't necessarily pointed at that. It's always going to be pointed at what you and me can do with in the context of the reality that we face. We know that the curve is not going to be perfectly smooth or flat or anything like that, okay? It's going to be a bumpy road ahead of us. And I want to look back when my hair is very gray, and I want to be proud of myself. And Akame and Raina and Douglas, Zakiah, I hope you want to be the same. I hope you want to do the same. I want you to look back to yourself. You know what? At least I did something. It wasn't much. It was just a video. It was just a mask. But at least it was something. I didn't ignore the problem. I want to have a little bit of that pride when I go to sleep as an old man. And you guys are a lot younger than me, so you'll still be young when you look back. But I guess that's so much about what a code of honor is your ability to look back on yourself with an amount of pride. You don't feel ashamed of yourself. I think that's what a lot of my promises are about, is escaping a sense of that shame. I just don't know how to live with it very well, so I just don't want it to be a part of my life. Go to becauseIsaidIwould.org/grandparent video, and you can learn more about that promise to record a video, share a story about your grandparents or an elderly person in your life, why you love them, and explain what's at stake for those who may not be taking this seriously anymore. Okay. Let's go down here to the live chat. Thank you, Cassie, a staff member at Because I Said I Would, mentioning that for those who might be interested in getting a shirt like Toby asked, you can go to becauseIsaidIwould.org/store and get that. Douglas says he's 56 years old. I love it. I didn't know that. Appreciate you joining. And Toby's only 14, so we've got a range here, man. Life experience. I'm in the dab middle of both of those. I'll be 35. Is it next week? Hold on. Let me check. 35. Yeah. I'll be 35 on Monday. Just with my... hold on. This is unrelated. I also want to show you guys my mullet. It's better when it's against the purple background. It's getting real hockey hair back there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, So we went over the 4 types of self-control. Understand, analyze yourself, know where the weaknesses and strengths are, play to what you're good at, and fix what might be a challenge. Is that something you can do? Try your best, right? Then we checked in with Veronica, a chapter member, some of her thoughts on the neighbors she's trying to keep safe, neighbors that she's trying to support. We talked about an incredible person of talent. An NFL athlete winning the Super Bowl decides, you know what, I'm going to the local hospital anyway because I was born, I was put on this planet to do some good, and that can't always be done in a field. Love that trending promise. And then your individual actions, making one of those videos. Love to see that. With that, I want to turn to just final comments. I've been ending the stream last time with a quote. I'm going to end it this time with a quote. Might make that a habit. I don't know. But let's get to it. Jane Addams once said, "The essence of immorality is the tendency to make an exception of myself." Oh, how good we are at judging other people, right? Pointing a finger, man. I'm surprised it's not some kind of tournament or a sport in itself. We love to hold other people accountable. We love to talk about what they should do, how they should act, what's wrong with them. But maybe the essence of immorality is the tendency to make an exception for oneself. We give ourselves a hall pass on like everything. We say, and this is an exception, or I had to do this for that. And sometimes there are. I'm not saying there aren't reasons sometimes. Of course there are. And you don't have to be too hard on yourself, but you also can't preach one standard and live by another. I just think we got to be pretty honest with ourselves. The essence of immorality is the tendency to make an exception of myself. I could believe that. Guys, I really appreciate your support for Because I Said I Would. Going through some pretty hard times financially for the charity, but your support reminds us of how important our work is. Thank you for joining. Raina, if you want to learn more about becoming a chapter member, please email us, contact@becauseIsaidIwould.org. That's contact@becauseIsaidIwould.org. I see you in the live chat. Subscribe or don't. Follow us on Instagram or don't. None of it really matters. You just keep your promises, and that would be plenty for us, okay?